Ah, churros, the crispy, sugary treat that tastes like a siesta in your mouth. That sounded better in my head. On this episode, I'm going to show you how to make gorgeous churros with the versatility of making pate choux and how to fry these babies for perfection and crunch. I'll even show you some secrets on how to make a chocolate sauce that'll make your heart sing. As always, our videos are filled with tips from a classically trained pastry chef, moi, for that added touch of quality. But first, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell to help us get to that first 1,000 subscribers. Here in the US, it's common to find churros in amusement parks like Disney's Epcot, where we're going to be trying their Mexican-style churros dipped in chocolate sauce. That's after we try to figure out how the hell they make the cosmic generator disappear on Guardians of the Galaxy, while everyone else runs over their grandma trying to get on the ride 10 seconds faster.
What's happening?
How did they do that? Epcot was hella busy, so we decided to eat at one of the 7 wonders of the world. I mean, look at its majesty. This is totally real, right? Remember churro before they all are gone. Remember churro.
Let's go ahead and dip it in there. Nice consistency of chocolate sauce, stays put. Crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside. Really delicious snack. Crunchier than just a long stick because they're fried on the left and right side.
So I will say one thing, this chocolate sauce is very liquidy and runny, and with that being said, it's simple syrup based and less chocolate than I would like. So we're gonna bump it up a notch when we're at home making it ourselves, and I'm gonna put extra chocolate.
Let's see how many we can make at home for the price of 8. I'll see you back in the kitchen.
A lot of people don't realize, but pate choux is basically just eclairs or cream puffs or Paris breast, those beautiful little pastry swans filled with chantilly cream, pastry cream, and even some strawberries sometimes. But did you know that if you pipe it and directly fry it, cover it in cinnamon sugar, you have a churro? Let's show you just how versatile pate choux can be. So first things first, let's scale our flour and make sure we sift it. So we need 170 grams of all-purpose flour. Next, we're gonna go ahead and scale all of our salt and sugar. Now, pate choux doesn't have a lot of sugar content, but you are using milk and butter, which has sugar in it. So 5 grams of salt it is, and 5 grams of sugar. Now we need 320 grams of milk. Some pate choux recipes are gonna use water and milk. For this recipe, specific fat content of this recipe requires 4% milk or whole milk. So just keep that in mind if you're ever doing a pate choux recipe and you're like, why is there water in here? It just depends on how you divvy up the fat content in the recipe. 320 grams, what we're looking for. This milk is gonna go on our pot on the stove, and we're gonna warm it up with that salt and sugar. We also need to warm up our butter on the stove with those ingredients, so I'm gonna scale out our butter at 150 grams. All right, and 150 grams of butter goes in with the pot on the stove. And you're just gonna wait until the butter, milk, salt, and sugar all melt and are warm together before adding your flour. We need 320 grams of eggs for this project. Now, make sure you scramble those eggs because we might not use all the eggs. That's the trick to making pate choux, and I'll show and explain that a little bit later. Crack on a flat surface, breaking through the chalaise of the egg, which is that inside film of the skin. When we have to do large quantities of these recipes in the pastry shop, we do use a secret weapon, the immersion blender. But I know most of you at home only have a whisk, so for this video, I'm using a whisk. But really, pastry chefs use an immersion blender for this part of the project. My eggs look like they're well mixed together, and they're pretty easily mixed to pour now, which is what I wanted them to be. But look at this, we got boiling on the stove. I'm just gonna go ahead and turn that off for a second. And look at that, all melted together. So what do we do at this stage? Well, we transfer to a whisk, and we're gonna make what's called a roux, which is when you add in all your flour and you go to town. You want a skin to form at the bottom of the pan, So we're actually gonna switch from using the whisk, now that I know I don't have any flour lumps, and we're gonna dry out the roux using that spatula. You want a skin to form on the bottom of the pan. I can already see that skin forming, but more importantly, the longer you cook the roux on the stove, the more eggs you are gonna have to use in the overall recipe because the moisture is evaporating right now. Why do we cook the roux on the stove? Well, we're breaking apart all of the gluten molecules. As we mix it, we create gluten, but more importantly, as you begin to cook it, you're also breaking apart gluten. You can tell when the roux is done when the whole bottom of the pan is coated in that nice gluten skin, which I can kind of see it's already there. Come on, baby, get in there. You can see if I dig my spatula into it, the whole bottom is coated with a skin. As this cools down, steam rises up off the pate choux, which is exactly what we want to happen. We don't want to pour in the eggs now. Do not pour in eggs. Why? It's too hot. We don't want our eggs to cook in here. We want them to cook in the frying oil later, or more importantly, when you're making pate choux for eclairs and cream puffs, we want those eggs to cook in the oven for volume. I don't want the gluten to overwork itself, so I am gonna put this on a stir speed, which is the lowest speed possible for a KitchenAid. And we have about a minute more to go before I can start adding in my eggs. All right, we're ready to add in our eggs. I can put my hands on the bowl. It's like a lukewarm cup of tea or coffee, and my eggs are nice and liquidy. So here we go. I'm gonna add about a third of the eggs in a small stream to start. I want the roux to accept the eggs before I add more eggs. Wait till it accepts it. Now, how do you know it's ready? Well, you know when it's ready when it starts to stick to the side of your bowl and when it creates like this almost thick-ish pudding-like texture. I'll show you in just a second. And for the amount of moisture I cooked off in the roux, I actually did need all 320 grams of those eggs. Pate choux is a very finicky thing. And unless you know what you're looking for, which is to stick to the side of the bowl, make sure that when you take a test of the batter, that the test of the batter comes to a V shape. So I should be able to pull this up, gather it up around your paddle, let it drop from the paddle and form a V shape. Now you don't want this pouring off like a waterfall. That means you added too many eggs and your liquid content is too high. It should gloop off like really thick pudding. Most importantly, be patient with yourself. Pate choux takes lots and lots of years to perfect. Pate choux is considered the ultimate test for baking in France. Overall, I'm very happy with how this turned out. Let's get it in our piping bag, get some oil on the stove, and let's start frying up those churros. So we're using pure vegetable oil for frying, and I just have it on a medium heat. And we're gonna fry at about 360 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm gonna be showing you two ways to prepare your batter. One, we're just gonna pipe it directly into hot oil. But two, we're gonna pipe it onto a silicone baking sheet and then freeze it, chop it apart with a knife, and then fry it. Multiple techniques to achieve a very similar result. It's just how you want to bake it off, basically. Well, not bake it off, fry it off. I'm using what's known as star tips, but this one has more teeth on it. It doesn't matter which one you use. If you have a smaller one, that's fine. Just know your churros are gonna come out a little smaller. So I'm gonna drop that sucker in. Make sure it reaches all the way to the edge of my piping bag, which it looks like I have to cut a little bit, which is fine. And the way you cut a Fat Daddy-O piping bag is, yes, using a knife and cutting directly up against your metal. But this is the most accurate way to cut even a normal piping bag is you're using metal tips and you just cut up against the metal itself, pulling apart. But you want it really tight around that tip. How do we grab a piping bag? T-Rex arms. Extend T-Rex arms. Grab the middle of your piping bag mass. Grab the back of your piping bag. And we're gonna pinch close with our thumbs to our pointer finger. Hand to your heart. Tennis ball pressure in your dominant hand. And then we're just gonna pipe a straight line. These are going in the freezer, and then we'll save these a bit for later. Now we're gonna fill up the rest of the piping bag with the remaining batter. Baking is kind of like having a library of knowledge in your head and understanding all the rules in order to get a finished product. Sometimes it's about knowing one recipe really well and then the versatility of finishing that recipe off. And grab my sugar, grab some cinnamon, as much or as little as you want. It's really up to you. And you want to make sure that cinnamon sugar is ready to go so when you come out of the fryer, you have something to toss those churros in. More cinnamon, please. Why? Because I'm American. So many European pastry chefs make fun of us Americans for putting cinnamon in everything, but I mean, give me a break. They put raspberry in everything. They put egg whites in everything. Like, come on, we all have things we like. If you want to go to your spice shop and splurge, I highly recommend buying Saigon cinnamon. Really beautiful cinnamon. Oh my God, it has like this smokiness to it, but also this abundant woodsy fruitiness. So we're just gonna do a test run with one of them. So I'm gonna pipe it, cut it. And that's our test one. So I'm gonna be patient and wait. It didn't sizzle right away, which tells me the oil isn't quite there, but you also don't want your oil too hot because then it'll burn your churro. I also have my sheet pan of paper towels because as much as I like something fried, you're gonna wanna get off the residual grease before tossing it in your cinnamon sugar. Oh, it rotated by itself. It's alive. Oh, look at that little sucker dance. Look how it puffed up. Look how it grew in size. Look who's a big boy now. My dog loves all my baking. Flip it, baby, yeah. Ow. Now, how do you know when something is done frying? Well, you pay attention to those bubbles. As soon as you don't see bubbles coming off of it, and especially when you see it get a darker color, you know there's no more moisture, no more eggs to cook. I'm gonna submerge it to check it, make sure everything's cooked. I'm looking for the bubbles to chill out and for the color to darken just a bit more. I believe it's ready, so I'm gonna pick it up, shake off as much oil as I can. Roll to the corner. While it's hot, so the cinnamon sugar sticks. Oh, the cinnamon sugar coats the whole thing. Nom nom nom. See how I stay really close to the surface of the oil as I'm cutting it, as to not splash my skin. This is also why I showed you how to freeze them, cut them, and then fry them, because this is pretty scary. Putting your scissors in the oil, then cutting. And this will keep your scissors clean while you do each individual cut. I also turned my oil back down to a medium.
Using your spider, make sure to flip each one of the churros before the other side gets too dark, as it'll make it even harder to flip the darker the other side gets. Basically, even tanning makes for a perfect golden brown. Place your churros in sugar after draining the oil on some paper towels. This will ensure that the sugar actually sticks to the churro itself. A warm churro is a well-coated churro. Remember, these are the churros we immediately started piping after making the batter and filling our piping bag, not the churros that we chilled. The gluten structure is still nice and tight. We're gonna try a different method, which is chopping up the frozen ones that have been in the freezer for over 2 days now. This has allowed the gluten to not only relax, but has also given us the option of prepping them ahead of a party. Look how much they slow down the frying process. Also note that it significantly cools down your oil, so take that into consideration. It's like dropping ice cubes into hot oil, so just make sure to always watch the temperature and maintain a 360 Fahrenheit. We drain them on a paper towel and toss them while they're warm in the sugar cinnamon mixture. They even taste great as they cool down. You don't have to serve them warm, but if you want to, you can always rewarm them in a 325 Fahrenheit oven for about 5 to 10 minutes. Notice the significant size difference between the ones we piped using a piping bag and cutting them with scissors, and the ones we piped out onto a silpat mat and cut with a knife.
Basically, all chocolate sauce is sugar water with cocoa powder in it. But I'm gonna stabilize it with a little bit of corn syrup so I'm able to add real chocolate in the chocolate sauce. So we need equal parts water and sugar to start, and about 20% of corn syrup. We're gonna use 100 grams of water, and we're gonna use about 25 grams of corn syrup. This is gonna go on the stove to cook.
When making chocolate sauce, make sure not to over stir. You're gonna cause crystallization, and the whole point is to allow the sugar and water to boil and let that corn syrup prevent crystallization.
I'm gonna do 25 grams of cocoa powder and 25 grams of special dark chocolate chips. I want a little bit more of the water content cooked off. I'm looking for 205 degrees. And we're gonna go ahead and add our cocoa powder and our chocolate chips now. And I'm gonna turn off the heat and whisk it in. And I can promise you that a little bit of salt goes a long way in this recipe. So we're just gonna do a tiny little pinch of salt in here. Turn off the heat, add your cocoa powder and your teeny bit of chocolate, dark chocolate chips, and a pinch of salt. And booyah, you got chocolate sauce right at home. Who knew? So simple. And from scratch. Don't need it out of the bottle. You can use this to make chocolate milk. I don't know, some of you buying Hershey's squeezable, you can just make it. I'm pour my chocolate sauce into a container, and I'm gonna dip these suckers and eat them. Oh, so much darker than the one at Disney. That definitely has lots of chocolate in it. Now that is a chocolatey chocolate sauce. Delicious. As the pastry super spy I am, these are the ones I snuck away from my Disney churro order just to have a visual comparison. They're now obviously inedible and soggy. At the time they were delicious, but just to see a comparison from theirs to mine have a bit more volume, and these are, well, dense, just like they were dense at the theme park. But hey, they were delicious at the theme park. These are delicious now. I give both a 10 out of 10. But by all means, you tell me how you like my recipe. Like, share, subscribe, and most of all, remember to follow for more pastry fun.